She was an orphan in exile, chosen not for beauty but for a hidden purpose. What if your most constrained moments were actually positioning you for something greater? Tonight, we explore how Esther's quiet year in the palace prepared her to save a nation and what that means for your own story of purpose. Imagine you are taken from everything familiar, your home, your people, your daily rhythms, and brought into a place of scented oils, polished stones, and watchful silences. That was Esther's reality. She entered the palace not by choice, but by royal decree, one among many young women summoned for the king's selection. This was no voluntary contest of charm or grace, it was a system. For 12 months, each candidate underwent rituals of purification, baths, aromatics, dietary restrictions, all designed to strip away individual identity and reshape each woman into an idealized version of desirability. In this environment, Esther stood apart, not by striving, but by stillness. Where others might have jockeyed for attention or leverage, she observed, she listened, she learned the routines and rhythms of the palace, the hierarchy among servants, the unspoken rules of conduct, the subtle signs of favor and disfavor. Hege, the king's eunuch in charge of the women, noticed her quiet dignity. She didn't flatter or insist, she cooperated with grace. This earned his trust, and with it, his guidance. All the while, Esther guarded a crucial secret, her Jewish heritage. In a empire where ethnic identities could mark you as outsider or enemy, this was not an act of shame, but strategy. By concealing her origin, she moved through the court without prejudice, gathering insight while remaining unthreatening. What might have been a vulnerability became, instead, a form of protection, a veil that allowed her to see without being fully seen. When the time came for her to meet the king, she carried herself with a composure that set her apart. It wasn't merely beauty that captivated, it was her presence, the result of months of watching, waiting, and understanding a world not her own. She became queen not because she fought the system, but because she mastered it through humility and perceptiveness. In a place designed to erase individuality, she retained herself by staying silent until the moment required her voice. Now, as Queen Esther's position shifts, but her method does not. She continues the same pattern of quiet observation she honed during her year of preparation. The Persian court is a delicate web of alliances, ambitions, and unspoken rivalries. Every gesture carries weight. Every silence speaks. Esther watches it, all the flattering advisors, the anxious officials, the subtle shifts in the king's demeanor after a long day or a difficult decision. She witnesses intrigue firsthand, whispered conversations in palace corridors, sudden promotions, discreet disappearances, yet she chooses when to speak and when to withhold. Consider Mordecai's uncovering of the assassination plot against the king. That act, seemingly minor at the moment, demonstrates how loyalty and attention yield monumental consequences. It's recorded in the court chronicles, a footnote at the time, but later, a thread pulled at just the right moment. Esther learns the king's rhythms deeply. She notes which topics please him, which irritate, which hours he is most receptive. She maps the informal networks of influence, who holds real power behind titles, who is trusted, who is feared. All this she absorbs, without drawing attention. Her concealed Jewish identity, once a necessary secret, now becomes a strategic advantage. It allows her to listen without being categorized, to gather insight without raising suspicion. She is neither fully insider nor outsider, and that ambiguity grants her a unique vantage point. Think about how she builds intelligence. Not through interrogation or bold inquiry, but through patience. She notices who meets with Haman late into the evening. She observes the growing arrogance in his posture, the swelling pride that makes him blind to risk. She hears the murmurs of discontent among the provincial governors, the undercurrents of fear among the Jewish diaspora. Every piece fits into a mental mosaic of the empire's mood and movement. Why did Esther hide her identity? Not from fear, but foresight. That silence was her shield and, eventually, her weapon. It allowed her to navigate a prejudiced system without being dismissed, to collect the very information that would one day help her undo a genocide. In a world where speech was often performative, her power grew in the quiet spaces between words. What transforms a quiet observer into someone willing to risk everything? That moment came for Esther when Haman's decree of genocide reached the Palisade royal order that condemned every Jew in the empire to death. Suddenly, her hidden identity was no longer just a strategic advantage. It was a burden and a responsibility. The test was clear: approach the king uninvited and face execution unless he extended his golden scepter. Anything less than that gesture meant instant death. Mordecai's challenge pushed her past hesitation. His words were stark: if she remained silent, deliverance might come from another place, but she would lose her purpose. That confrontation shifted something in her. She recognized this was why she had been placed in the palace, not for comfort or status, but for this moment of decision. But Esther's response was not reckless. It was measured, calculated. She did not rush to the throne room. Instead, she called for a 3-day fast among her people. This was not superstition. It was preparation. She understood that spiritual and communal alignment could shape outcomes as much as political maneuvering. She also knew the king's habits, his moods, the precise rhythms of court ceremony. Her year of observation had given her that. She planned her approach with care. Rather than a desperate plea, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet, then another. This pacing was deliberate. She allowed tension to build, intrigue to simmer. She gave the king time to settle into a receptive mood, and Haman time to grow overconfident. She used social ritual as a shield and a strategy, a way to control the setting and the stakes. How did Esther overcome the threat of death? Not through impulsive bravery, but through layered preparation. Her courage was the product of patience, the support of her community, and a faith that reframed fear as focus. She turned observation into action, silence into appeal, and risk into resolve. Her story reminds us that true courage often looks less like a sudden leap, and more like a series of small, intentional steps, each one taken only when the time is right. Now witness how seemingly random events converge at the perfect moment. The king cannot sleep. This is no minor inconvenience. It is the pivot on which everything turns. He calls for the court chronicles to be read not for entertainment, but as a remedy for restlessness. The scrolls unwind, detailing years of petitions, decrees, and administrative records. Then, a forgotten entry surfaces: Mordecai's act of loyalty in exposing an assassination plot. The king learns that this man was never rewarded. At that very hour, Haman enters the outer court. He has come to request Mordecai's execution, his pride still burning from the Jews' refusal to bow. He does not know what is unfolding in the king's chambers. He imagines only his own triumph. The timing is almost theatrical. The king, freshly reminded of Mordecai's service, asks Haman what should be done for the man the king wishes to honor. Certain the honor is meant for himself, Haman proposes a lavish public ceremony: royal robes, a parade through the city, declarations of praise. He imagines himself at the center of it all. His vanity blinds him to the possibility that another might be in view. Meanwhile, Esther's strategic patience yields its result. Her first banquet has stirred the king's curiosity. Her second will channel his growing unease. She allows the king's mood to settle, his questions to form. She gives Haman time to squirm in his ambition, to misunderstand the shifting ground beneath him. Think about the chain of ordinary events: a sleepless night, an archived record, an arrogant suggestion. None are miracles in the conventional sense. No seas part, no voices speak from the sky. Yet their alignment is precise, almost engineered. The king's insomnia, the court reader's selection of that particular passage, Haman's poorly timed arrival, each minor event interlocks with the next. This is how divine fingerprints often appear, not in the spectacular, but in the synchronization of the mundane. A nation's fate shifts not because the world stops, but because ordinary moments converge with extraordinary purpose. The story suggests that what we call coincidence might sometimes be a kind of order visible only in hindsight, purposeful only when the pieces are seen together. Esther's story teaches us that purpose often grows in seasons of constraint, not dramatic calling. It was her year of quiet observation, not sudden heroism, that equipped her to save a nation. Next time you feel confined by slow or silent circumstances, consider what you might be learning through watchfulness. Those ordinary moments of patience, unnoticed loyalty, or hidden preparation may be shaping you for something essential. The same unseen hand that guided an orphan into a palace may be weaving purpose through your everyday life, aligning timing and character in ways you can't yet perceive.